What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Ryan Lord official podcast. Today, we have yet a very special guest. Nigel, it's an honor to have you on the podcast. Can you start by introducing yourself and sharing the incredible journey that led you to become the founder of David to Goliath?
It's a pleasure to be here, Ryan. So, first question, do you want the short or the long version?
Literally, the floor is yours. So, yeah.
Okay, get ready. So, look, man, I'm not one of these entrepreneurs who had candy empires or was selling lemonade on stands when I was younger. At 26 years old, I was in the corporate world, working for a big construction consultancy called AECOM, and I was a quantity surveyor. And for those people who don't know what that is, it's the guy who counts bricks and tells their clients how much money they've lost. So, as you can imagine, they're not a really happy bunch of people, and I fucking hated my job. I don't know if we can swear, but just a warning, I do drop the F-bomb from time to
That's
time.
fine. That's fine. Hopefully, YouTube could still monetize me.
So on the one walk home from work at 26 years old, that day I was Googling what an entrepreneur was. I didn't even fucking know what an entrepreneur was. I had to Google it. And I decided to myself, look, for the first time in my life, I've lived to please other people, please my parents, please the people around me. I'm going to take a chance on myself, Ryan. So I quit the corporate world and I started freelancing on a little platform called Upwork. And it was the best decision I ever made in my life. Now, following that, I built my first marketing agency, which failed. Then I built my second marketing agency. It was actually for someone else in the real estate space. And we grew that to a 20-person team. We got to a 7-figure run rate. And then I found out the owner was a narcissist. But within this process, something incredible happened. I met a woman that changed my life. Now, I got incessantly bullied at school. So I was a really nervous individual, riddled with deep insecurity, Ryan. And this woman believed in me like you could never imagine. You know, you just find that one person who just gets you, who just understands you, all your weird and your wacky obsessions. They just accept you for who you are. Not only that, they will empower you to be you and to share yourself with the world. And this woman gave me that. And from that, I had the confidence to go and build this agency. And even though the owner turned out to be a narcissist and he ran that business into the ground, I found someone else, an old friend called Josh. He was running a little agency called Alpha Inbound at the time. And I wanted to really prove to myself, to prove to this woman, to prove to all the doubters that I had it within me. Because even though this other guy took all the credit, I was the one who got all the experience, right? So I knew I had so much in me. And I wasn't even getting paid a salary. I was doing it just on pure commission. But I made this bold promise to the founder. I said, look, Josh, I'm going to get this agency to $100,000 a month. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, man. I just know I am not going to stop until the job is done. Now, that was at the back end of 2021. And I actually hired this woman, and the stage was set. We're going to conquer the world again together. September 2023, we smashed through that target, hit 123,000 in revenue. And from the outside looking in, man, it was all sunshine and rainbows. You know, we'd hit this goal. I got a LinkedIn audience of 45,000 people, great reputation in the space, working with some of the best D2C brands in the game. But on the inside, I was crumbling. I lost the person, this woman, who believed in me most. She betrayed me. And I was on the floor in Austin, in my flat, and I nearly took my own life. And it was in that dark moment I said to myself, Ryan, if I'm not going to do this for me, I'm going to do this for everyone else who deserves a second chance in life. Because I needed something to pull me out of that despair. And that's when I said to Josh, it's been a fucking emotional ride, man, but I'm quitting. I'm quitting my 6-figure salary job with not much savings in the bank to risk everything and build David to Goliath. Now, why is it called David to Goliath? David had the self-belief passed on to him with a slingshot and a few pebbles to beat the mighty Goliath, the greatest underdog story of all time. So I had this belief passed to me by this woman. But at this point, I needed to believe in myself. I needed to climb off the canvas of death and have something to get me out of that situation And I started thinking, I'm not the only one struggling. Yes, there's entrepreneurs out there. Loneliness is ridiculous right now. Suicide rates are through the roof. Obviously, I got close to there myself. And there's not enough people that are standing up in this world. It's a soft world, Ryan. Not enough people that are standing up, taking ownership of their shit and saying, look, I'm struggling. I'm hurt right now. But guess what? Here's what I'm doing about it. This is my method of madness to get out of this situation. And for me, that is David to Goliath. So I set the impossible target of 0 to 100,000 subscribers on our newsletter, our community, in 1 calendar year. And we're in week 9 right now, and we've hit 10,000 subscribers. So we've made good progress so far. We've still got a hell of a lot of work to do. But I'm here to tell people I was going through the struggle, I was going through the pain, but I'm doing something about it. And I want to pass that belief on and tell people if you're going through the struggle, you have to believe in yourself because no one is going to believe in you for you. And if you do that, if you take action and you do the inputs that get the outputs that you need in life, you can escape the life of mediocrity. You can write your own playbook and you really, really can achieve massive success.
That's insane. Like this is gonna make some great short form content, by the way. So great job there. But wow, like that's really captivating. Like how did you manage to grow an audience of, up to 100,000 on the newsletter? First of all, before I ask you the next question I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, so it's 10,000 right now. We're looking to get to
All
100,000
right.
by the end of this year. But it's been a mixture. So I, spent $100 million on paid advertising. So I know the paid ads game. So 65% of the audience has come through paid ads. And the other 35% has come from a mixture of things, most of it my LinkedIn content and my LinkedIn audience, right?
Right. So like you spent $100 million as in like for your clients ad spend or like as
Yeah,
in
clients
you?
ad
Oh,
spend.
right, right,
I
right.
wish it was
Okay.
my money, man.
Right. Like I was about to say, okay, perfect. So, linking back to the time that you was like at your low state, right?
Yeah.
Like would you say that it's predominantly due to the relationship that you were in? And as you said, I think it's because the self-belief, right, of that person
Mm.
believing in you was stripped from you, if I'm
Yeah.
correct. Right. So I think like, like have you like, what kind of lesson have you learned from that, especially in regards to self-belief and even like choosing the right relationship?
Yeah. So Simon Sinek put this quote out. You know who he is, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Big fan.
Yeah. So he put the quote out, which is a definition of love. And it was really good. It hit deep for me. And he basically said, love is giving the opportunity for someone to destroy you and trusting that they won't do it. And that's
Wow.
exactly what I did, man. And she did destroy me. So you've got to take responsibility in these situations. You've got to understand the mistakes that you've made, and you can't blame it on external circumstance. So I made mistakes. The big mistake that I made, and it's interesting because I actually put a post up on LinkedIn the other day about this, and it got reshared on Reddit on the LinkedIn Lunatics thread, and it went viral. It had like, 500,000 views. And Pete, there were hundreds and hundreds of people bashing me, telling me that I was a devil, I was a narcissist, I was ugly, all this stuff. That was my first real experience of toxic hate at like a higher level. And basically, the post was about keeping to your internal standards. So the problem was that in this relationship, I was it's tough. It's tough. But basically, this woman raised my standards in so many areas, and that's why I respect her in the first place, but not all areas. And I knew this deep down. Now, context, I was running a startup, which she was also in. The other people in the company didn't know about it. I was working 100 hours a week. We weren't at the grand 100K a month. This was in the growth phase. It was fucking chaos. And as well as that, she had a kid. So I was trying to father the kid. Obviously, I'm not a father. So that was difficult. So it was really, really stressful. But in the midst of all this chaos, I wasn't honest with her. I didn't tell her that I didn't see a future together, and she didn't meet all of my internal standards. And that was a lesson that I'd learned, which is being brutally honest with yourself about what you want. Because here's my thing, and if you want to be exceptional, you've got to be an exception. If Is it selfish to really let go of people short term that are going to be potentially obstacles in your trajectory of growth if long term you impact the life of thousands, if not millions of people? Now, that's a question that everyone has to answer for themselves. But for me, I know the answer. And moving forward, I'm going to be brutally honest with who I spend my time with, who I get into relationships with, and ultimately my internal standards as a person, because I'm obsessive, right? I'm weird. I'm crazy. But you know what? Fucking love it. And I'm going to lean into that so much. And that's what David to Goliath's all about. It's about showing people just be yourself, because everyone's so scared about external opinions. But if we fast forward it to when you're on your deathbed and you look back at your life, the short-term pain of letting go of some of the closest people to you pales in comparison to that last feeling of regret when you look back over your life and you ask yourself, what if? What if I wrote that book? What if I did that crazy thing that I've always wanted to do? And you're never ever going to say to yourself when you get to the end of it all, I wish I'd not lived a more epic story. And I'm going to build and write an epic story. And as Churchill once said, history will be kind for me because I intend to write it.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Wow, very, very powerful. Very, very powerful again. Wow. And I think look, like I actually put out a post earlier on myself on Snapchat, and it's just all about the word selfish, right? And I feel like it's a manipulation word. Somebody would say that you're being selfish because you put yourself first, whereas everybody kind of puts themselves first, right? Everybody has themselves, within their best interest. So me personally, sometimes you got to be careful when somebody calls you selfish, and how we kind of throw around the term, being selfish, right? So like that's really interesting that you actually touched, that you touched on that point. And then when it comes to having your like your girlfriend work in the agency at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like how important is that, or like was that like a bad mistake? Like do you not mix
Mm.
relationships with business, or do you feel like it helped you and it's actually a good thing to do?
I probably won't do it again, but I don't regret it because the relationship that was forged there, the magic we created together, that was the cornerstone of everything we did was great. And it made me who I am today. So I don't regret it at all. Yeah, I've made mistakes, I've learned lessons, but I don't regret it. But actually, to your previous point, when you asked me about finding a partner, I'm also a big believer now, since that to find a worthy mate, first, you need to be a worthy mate. And most people, including myself, do not deserve the partner of their dreams. Why? Because they haven't worked on themselves first. So it comes back to that point you made, Ryan, of being selfish. You've got to work on yourself first. You've got to do the things to be the man or the woman that you want to become, which is going to attract that individual. Because if you're on a mission, as a guy, like if you're on a mission, you're trying to achieve something great. And especially if it's got really good purpose behind it, like for me at David to Goliath, you're helping, inspiring other people. People love that. And, women, the opposite sex, men, if you're a woman, they love getting behind a mission. And in that process, you can develop your skill sets, being able to speak on stage in front of hundreds of people, being able to do podcasts like this, being able to lead teams, getting your health in order, getting your sleep in order, getting your diet in order, all of these different boxes that you have to tick off to become this exceptional person. If you keep doing that, for me, the way I see it is the partner comes at the end as a prize. And that's what I'm working towards. So for now, a lot of my friends told me, they were like, Nigel, just start dating loads of women. Like, this would be a great way to get over that person. And I rejected all of their advice, Ryan. And I just said, I need to work on myself first. And I need to figure out what I need to do to become the man I want to become. And I'm just not going to stop and I'm going to keep looking in the mirror of truth, and hold myself to these deep internal standards that I know that I'm capable of. And this is a conversation for no one else but me and the man in the mirror.
I love that. I love that. That's very true. Usually we're told, especially as men, to, go and play with the other fishes, but that might not be the best thing to do. It's definitely down to self-work. So, I've got like two very good books that I've read called As a Man Thinketh and The Way of the Superior Man. And
Mm.
it's actually very relatable to, what you're saying at the moment. So what would you say is like your top three books that's kind of helped you on your journey and in life?
Yeah, I mean, I've got some for business as well. One I've read really recently was called The Motive. And this was actually referenced by Alex Hormozy, the book that took him
Big
from
fan, big
30,
fan.
yeah, took it, the book that the single book that unlocked his growth from 30 million to 100 million. And it's called The Motive. And basically, it's all about the motive, about being a leader. And Patrick Lencioni, it's a very short book. You can digest it in about a day. My mum got it for me for Christmas. I asked her for it. And I picked it up and I was like, I'll read a little bit of this, try and get some inspiration. I was hooked. Within 24 hours, I hadn't digested the whole thing. And it's basically a fable, a story that he tells of two different leaders. I'm not going to ruin the ending. It's got twists and turns. But the whole premise of the book is really understanding the motive behind a leader. And really, a leader is someone who's willing to sacrifice most of that for their team. And it all comes down to responsibility. So I definitely go and check out that book, because if not everyone is meant to be a leader, and if you're not, you need to identify that. And if it's your company, which is especially hard, you need to be able to give up the reins to someone else, because leadership is all about people management, and not a lot of people are good with that. And it's a really hard and lonely job. I know for myself, reading that book, I definitely am a leader. So now I can lean more into that strength. I love nothing more, Ryan, than talking to people, motivating people, sacrificing for them. And the best feeling as a leader, man, I just can't even put this into words, is when you turn underdogs into champions and you see that smile on their face when they realize they've achieved something greater than they ever possibly imagined in their wildest dreams. So we got time for two more books, because
Yeah,
that's the first one.
yeah, let's go. And also, I'd like to say, if you ever get the chance to meet Mr. Hormozy himself, please introduce him to this podcast. I'd love to get him on.
Yeah, definitely. He's got that school games thing going right now, so that
Yeah.
might be a good entry into the door.
Uh-huh.
So the second one, you probably already know this, it's Atomic Habits by James Clear.
I've got the book. I've got the book in the background. You can't see it, but it's somewhere over there.
Is it collecting dust on the shelf?
It's definitely not collecting dust on the shelf. No, I've got the audio book as well on Audible. So yeah.
Yeah, a quick tip, by the way, what I do, because I think I've never been diagnosed, I suffer from ADHD, is when you read a book, listen to the book on audio at the same time,
Yes,
because
that's what
it
I do.
gets into your brain with like the different wavelengths, and it
Yep.
really helps retain the information. For me,
Yep.
it's just because I can't focus otherwise.
Right.
But that's a good tip. But look, Atomic Habits, like this guy went so deep into habits, and if you actually take what he says and implement it, it will literally change your life. One of the biggest things I got out of that is really designing your environment. When we come back to internal standards, it's the auditing the people around you who are influencing you, but also your environment. Because a lot of people try and change their habits, man, but at the end of the day, if you haven't got the environment to do it, you're never going to be successful. They actually did a study, right, on people's net worth. Like, what is the biggest correlator to people's net worth? And it was actually quite astounding what they found. It's literally where you live. That's the biggest contributor. But the exciting part, and actually most people aren't willing to do this, you can change where you live. And it's incredible to me, Ryan, that so many people, they spend so long choosing the clothes they're going to wear. They spend so long choosing the car they're going to buy. They spend so long choosing what holiday they're going to go on. But where they live, that's an afterthought. Sure, they want like a nice house, they want to impress their friends, but actually thinking about, should I move out? Should I go to somewhere where there's people that have already walked the path that I want to achieve? They don't consider that. And then they realize years later in life why they couldn't change the bad habits and rewire their identity through these habits to be the person they need to become to get what they want in life. So James Clear's Atomic Habits is if you actually implement the advice in there, is an absolute game changer, man. I'm sure you agree.
Yeah. No, absolutely, I do. And look, like before we get onto the third book, right? I
Yeah,
believe that, we are a product of our environment. And I've actually had this conversation, I think like 2 days ago with somebody else, but they also believe that it comes down to your genetics as well, right? And we're trying to figure out like how much of your environment and your
nurture nature, yeah.
genetics, yeah, do you know what I mean? Like it comes down to. And I think I said 70%, and I think I was right. It's about 70% environment and then 30% like genetics. And that was just a guess from the top of my head. And then when they actually went and Googled it, it was actually right. So, like, do you feel like that's like a truthful representation of what it actually is, or do you feel like, one's higher than the other?
Yeah, but even it doesn't matter because even if it's not, even if it's 90% genetics and 10% environment, you can't change your genetics. So you've got to basically in life figure out what you can change. And if it's only 10%, obviously it sounds good. It's not, which is exciting. It's 70%, right? But whatever it is, you've got to focus on what you can change and what you can control. And you can change your environment. So it's almost like if you've got a certain potential that you can max out, if you're like in a video game, you max it out. And one of the things to do to max it out is change your environment. Like, forget the genetics, the cards have already been dealt. Play with the cards you've been dealt and get uncomfortable and change your environment. And I've seen the changes. Like, I moved to New York, I moved to Vancouver, I moved to Austin. Like, these are massive periods of growth for me, getting massively uncomfortable, living in other countries, hanging around with other successful entrepreneurs. To give an example, I used to think I knew what hard work was, Ryan. I had no fucking idea. When I started hanging around with entrepreneurs that are doing 100 million a year, my expectations are massively redefined. Like, these guys showed me what real hard work's like. They showed me what real stress and what real pressure's like. And once my standards were reset by actually spending time with these people, I was like, okay, so that's what it takes. And at that point, it was either throw in the towel and just accept you're not going to be able to achieve what you want, or step up a level and do what's required.
So then, like, how does one find a balance, right? Do you actually believe that you can find a balance, or do you believe, if you want to make X amount of money, you have to go hard? Because I guess like you're kind of playing with your sanity, and like in a way, if you're just 100% focused on business and 100% focused on the money, it might be taken from your health, for example. So how do you kind of balance the two?
Well, my question back to you, Ryan, would be, name me someone great who's achieved something absolutely extraordinary in life that didn't go through a period of unbalance.
Yeah, no one.
Why is that? Well, that just shows that obsession, whilst in today's society is looked down on, it's a necessity for greatness. And here's my take on it, because I have this conversation with my family all the time, and they disagree with me. They're always like, work less, be more balanced, go on holidays, blah, blah, blah. But once you understand how the game works, the game of business, the game of life, you understand that to be rich, and Naval Ravikant, I could suggest that as another book. I was going to suggest another one for Robert Cialdini, but he's got a
Well,
really
that's a
good book.
bonus. That's a bonus book. So
Yeah,
yeah, you could talk
yeah.
about this one.
So Naval Ravikant is, well, there's some guy I can't remember his name, but he basically summarized all his best tweets and podcasts. This guy is literally like a walking book of wisdom, like an Indian entrepreneur who built, Angel List, like he built these massive companies, but he's just a really original thinker. And he basically said straightforwardly that you can't, if you trade your time for money, you cannot be rich. You have to get assets. So assets as in you own a business and you've got equity in that business, assets like property, assets like investing in the stock market. You have to beat inflation, but you have to have a compounding asset that compounds over time in your favor. Now, here's the truth. If you work and you're not obsessed about your work, it's very, very hard to get control of assets. So the way I look at it is, if I sacrifice for the next 5 to 10 years, I will be basically get to a point where I will be able to work if I choose. And at that point, I do love my work, so I'll probably work on only the things I love. But the thing is what's the other option? Because my thing to these people is, well, what's the alternative? Okay, you tell me alternative is working for a boss that I hate, living a life of mediocrity, living out my dreams through characters in movies, which is what most people do every night on Netflix, and then getting to the old age when I can't do much of 65, 70 to rely on a government pension, and I've been paying off a mortgage for my whole life. How's that for me a good exchange of value? It's not. So the point is, it's like the alternative for me, it's a non-negotiable. And at that point, I realize that I have to be obsessed to get these assets. And then at that point, I'll have control in my life. Because if I have to rely on a government pension, Ryan, I will have failed in life. That is just not going to happen. As long as I have a heart that beats and lungs that work, I'll never give in and I'll just keep going.
Yeah, and you know, it's actually crazy that you say that because I was reading a book called Ikigai. I'm pretty sure you've heard about it before. And
I've
they
not actually.
basically right, it's a really good book about, you know, like just happiness, balance, all that type of stuff. But they basically was saying that you know, like in certain parts of Asia, like they don't believe in retirement. Like apparently the word doesn't even exist in certain parts of Asia. So that's kind of like, you know, like the key to longevity and life, you know, is the fact that they just do what they love to the point where they don't feel like they have to retire from it. Whereas over
Yeah.
here, you know, a lot of people are chasing the retirement because they're kind of running away from, you know, the things that they're currently doing because they don't really love it. So like what would you like to kind of, you know, add to that?
Mm. Let's talk about happiness.
Go on, let's go. Look, like let's talk about happiness. Everyone's banging on about it now, but I don't think a lot of people know what it means. So yeah, over to you.
So people say money doesn't buy happiness. Okay. My response to them is what makes you happy? Like, just give me some answers of what people usually say to what makes them happy.
People usually say family, people usually say
Hmm.
relationships, people usually
Yep.
say like the art that they create, you know, some people like
Yeah.
music, some people like painting. So I guess it's just doing what I guess you're passionate about, right? I mean, I suppose like, you know, that's what
Yeah.
most people would say.
Yeah. So, with that in mind, relationships. If you have more money, you can spend more time with the people you love. Traveling. If you want to travel, if you have more money, you can spend more time traveling. Art. If you have more money, you can spend more time just focusing on the art that you love. So the thing is that when I talk about assets and money doesn't necessarily buy happiness, but it amplifies happiness and it gives you freedom and choice to be in control of what you want to do and what you love every single day. And it can be used as a tool to help support the people that you love. And that's why I just don't believe in this whole notion of money doesn't buy happiness. And the reality is, and I know this is might sound harsh, but that's what poor people say. Like, because they don't understand how the game works. And ultimately, if more people just realize how the game worked and they built up assets and gave themselves control, they would be able to be so much happier because they'd be able to spend their time. Time's the only thing that we've all got the same amount of, doing what they love every single day.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, like there was actually like a statistic. I believe it's a little bit old now, but they were basically saying that you can only be as happy as like, you know, 75K, but as soon as you kind of pass that mark, you know, your happiness doesn't really increase too much. But talking to somebody that's obviously made more than that, like, you know, are you currently happy right now? And when would you say that you are the most happy, you know, the most happiest? And does making more money for you make you more happy?
Yeah, well, look, I've got equity in some companies, but I haven't got loads of cash in the bank. I quit David to Goliath with not that much savings and just went for it. So I wouldn't say I'm particularly like cash rich right now, but I'm building up assets for the future. But when I've made more money, I would say that I felt more in control of my life and I could do the things. I could invest in my health. I could invest in what I wanted to do in terms of managing my time, and I had access to more things. So, yeah, honestly, on a scale of 1 to 10 of happiness, I slid further up that scale. But here's the other thing I'll say about happiness, because There's this book, we're getting into a lot of books here, but
Yep,
there's this
let's
book
go.
called Flow, and I can't remember the guy's name, it's really hard to pronounce, but it's basically talking about like, doing purposeful work. And what they found in that book, True Human Happiness, is really happiness comes when you're sacrificing for something challenging that's purposeful to you. When you see all the job surveys of people that are like 80% of people are unhappy with their jobs, it's because they're not doing purposeful work. And the reality is most people go and get a degree because there's no better option. They get into a load of debt and they just go and get a graduate job and they don't really think about it. And really, if they found purposeful work, and that only happens if you take risks and you get uncomfortable, they will be so much happier. So I think if you have obviously built up some assets and some cash, then it gives you time to do that exploring. And then you can find the purposeful work. For me, luckily, I've found this obviously through a lot of pain and I've managed to turn that around. And now I'm doing something purposeful in my life. And I can't tell you, man, you couldn't give me any money in the world, because what's interesting is the day before David to Goliath was going to launch, and this is a little exclusive for you on the podcast today, because I don't think I've shared this before, but it was as if fate would have it. I actually was on Facebook and not seen this woman for like 6 or 7 months. And I saw a picture for her for the first time, and she was with a new partner. And they were like happy, holding each other's hands, and it broke my fucking heart, man. And I was there with my mate Dan, who's helping me build these newsletters, and he's the one person I've really opened up to about these things. And he said to me, he was like, Nigel, would you trade places with that guy and not be building David to Goliath and inspiring all these people? And I was like, Dan, you couldn't give me any fucking money in the world. That guy might have her, he might have everything, but he doesn't have David to Goliath. And that purpose in that moment gave me a lot of clarity to know that I'm doing something which is bigger than me. And money aside, like that is the true calling in life, finding the purposeful work and sacrificing for a greater cause and ultimately leaving the world in a better place than we found it.
I love that. I love that. And don't you feel like doing what's purposeful is subjective, to the individual,
Yes.
because one person might say that this is purposeful, another person might be like to somebody that works in construction and has a construction company that what he's doing isn't really the like the most purposeful, whereas somebody else could look at it and be like, look, you're creating new homes every day, so don't you feel like it's a little bit subjective, and is purpose like just down to who you are as an individual?
Look, Ryan, if you find sitting on the couch knitting all day the most purposeful thing in the world to you, do that. And don't listen to outside opinion, because that's where I come back to the internal standards. You don't have to go make loads of money. I'm telling you that if you want more control and time in a capitalist economy, you've got to understand how the game works, in my opinion. But you don't have to make lots of money to find purpose. You do you is my message to everyone out there, and just shut out the world and ignore outside opinion, because then I said, like, you're going to get to the end of life and you're going to regret. So, there's this great story. I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically about this fisherman that's in Mexico. You might have heard of it before. And he goes out on his boat every single day and he catches a couple of fish and he brings them back and he goes and sells them in the local market and he feeds his family. And then the big American comes in and he's just like, man, he's like, these fish are great. He's like, let's do this. Let's get more boats. Let's hire more people. We can make so much money here. Like, the true capitalist mindset. And this guy's like, and then what? I'll get more stress. He was like, and then I'll have to manage people. And then I'll have more risk. He was like, I couldn't be more happier than just going out on my little fishing boat each day, getting those fish, selling them in the local market and feeding my family. That's what makes me happy. And that's a great story to anyone out there to show you that you should write your own story and find your own purpose and listen to what you want internally, because that is really the meaning of life. It's finding out what you want to do and what you love, going on a wild adventure to find it, writing an epic story in the process, but just listen to your internal heart, man.
I love that. I love that. And speaking about your story and America, right? I've actually had this conversation with quite a few people that's come on the podcast already, but I've actually got this
Yeah,
question for you. Just
sure.
because, you're from the UK, you've traveled to America, like myself and other people that I've had on the podcast. How would you say that the culture is different? And I'm talking about business wise, how is the business culture different over here and then over there? Is it easier for you to kind of sell over here, or is it easier for you to sell over there as a Brit? Because I've watched the podcast before, actually with Jordan Belfort and like another like marketing guru over here in the UK, and he said it's not until he moved to America that his life like started to improve business wise, and his success in business started to skyrocket. So how would you say that, like the two kind of differentiate, just as a Brit that's obviously lived here and, been born here and then moved to America to do business?
Well, I'll tell you what, the British accent certainly helps when I'm trying to sell middle-aged women on services.
Right,
I
okay.
use that card to my advantage.
I
No, in
love
all
that.
seriousness, though, here's the thing. Let's think about America. It was a country that was only founded a few hundred years ago, and it was a country that was founded from immigrants. And the whole American dream is like banding together a country of immigrants to go out there and fight and really just bring something out of nothing. So it's literally built on the foundation of entrepreneurship. So it was interesting when I really saw it like hard for the first time was when I was in Austin and then I came back to Manchester. Obviously I was having suicidal thoughts, so I needed to come home and get the support from my family and stuff. But when I first came back to Manchester, I got the tram in Manchester into the office Monday morning, and I looked around and I really noticed it for the first time. Like people's faces were just so miserable and so down. Everyone's keeping themselves to themselves. No one was smiling. And I was like, wow, these people look like they've given up in life. And it's really not that bad. Like you probably all got great jobs, you've got a great family, you live in great houses, you've got access to great healthcare. Like, why are you so miserable? And when you're in Austin, when you in America rather, you first go there as the Brit, which is like a very defensive mindset and always like paranoid about what people are thinking. At the start, it's a little bit strange. So you walk up to someone. I remember when I first went to New York, and you go up to the Yanks and they're like, hey man, how's it going? Awesome, dude. He's like, soccer, love that, man. It's like, fuck, like what's this guy trying to get out of me? Like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking this guy's definitely faking it. But then you realize this is their culture. This is how they've been brought up. And for entrepreneurs, when we've got these crazy ideas and we're almost delusional, it's that support system. It's those people saying, fuck yeah, let's go after that idea. Let's do it. Sure, you need to calculate risk. You need to make smart decisions. You need to know your finances. But in the UK, we just don't have that mindset. And when you stray outside of the herd in the UK, what happens is it basically shines a light on other people's insecurities. And I still remember when I started posting on LinkedIn, my old friends were like LinkedIn wanker. And they were the same friends that 2 years later came back to me, were like, how did you do this, man? And I'm just like, yeah, remember when you were calling me out at the time? It's because I stuck there and I got through it and I built something. And I think this is the stark contrast between the UK and the US is just that they're more supportive and they're open to accepting you as who you are, even if you're a little bit weird and wacky. And yes, that obviously has its negatives sometimes, like it's a bit wild and crazy over there. People are suing you left, right, and center. But ultimately, I think for the entrepreneur, it's a land of opportunity. And I know with all the issues going on there right now, I still think for a Brit, if you haven't already, go out there and try it for yourself because I was pleasantly surprised.
But why do you feel like it's like that, over here in the UK and
Mm.
it's like that over there in America? Is it because, as you said, it's the land of
The
opportunity? That's how it's
history.
been. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
the history, because the UK is a very old country, right? People are set in their ways. One thing that we do have, and here's another thing that I noticed, which is a massive benefit of the UK, in my opinion at least. When you go to a sporting event, you can really tell cultural differences between countries. So if you go to a sporting event in the US, like, I went to the Rangers hockey game in New York, it's like an entertainment thing. Like people are there, their families, and they don't really care about the result. They're eating hot dogs and stuff. There's like advertisements every 2 seconds. Like, I'm a big Man City fan. When I go to watch Man City against Man United, it's do or die. Like, people are there as if like the football club is their religion. And there's a really, really passionate atmosphere, and people really care about it. That's why so many people love coming to watch the English football. And I think that shows it's like we've got a really strong culture, which has massive advantages that I've just talked to. But on the other side, that means that it's hard to change. And people in the UK, they really don't like change. And that's why, again, other people try and argue this, but if you look at our rate of growth, after World War II, we had a massive rate of growth and innovation. And since that, we've kind of just flatlined. Like, as a country, we don't have much innovation anymore. And it's really sad. And I think it's because people are too comfortable and they're not afraid to change. And that's, for me, why I believe in entrepreneurship so much. It's because we're constrained by resource, but then we find weird and wacky ways of how to solve little problems. But if you extrapolate that across millions of people across the world, what does that lead to? It leads to groundbreaking innovations that solves the world's biggest problems. And then we ultimately leave the world in a better place than we found it.
I love that. And then where did you make the most money? Like, was it over here in the UK because you've been here a
US.
longer time, or was it, oh, in America?
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, the US people, they want to get straight down to business. It's a lot less time messing around. And the other thing, it's just a bigger marketplace. Like, it's 350 million people. I was in advertising. So the US culture is very capitalist. Like, they're more programmed for advertising. Like I said, when you go to sports games, like, if you ever watch the Super Bowl, like, every literally 2 minutes is another advertisement. So it's easier to grow companies. It's just a bigger market, which means they have more investment and they have more budget to grow companies faster. So, when you're in circles, you can find investors that have more money and they want to scale faster. And yeah, you're just around growth orientated people.
You're firing me up. You're firing me up. We're gonna have a conversation after the pod on how I can go out to America myself. And then,
Yeah, of
like,
course,
why
man.
did you choose Austin out of like every other state?
Yeah, so I was in New York, then I went to Vancouver, and then I went to Austin. So it's interesting because the state of Texas is very, like, it's a military state. It's very, capitalist. But Austin's not. Austin's quite left. Austin is basically a city which is literally formed of new immigrants. And because they've got this massive tax advantage, there's no state tax, which means it's a big advantage for big corporations. Loads of companies have moved there, which has sparked this massive innovation of growth. But when you're thinking about collaborating with other people, if you're in a city which has already kind of gone past its growth stage, everyone's already got their communities and networks, and it's harder to break in. It's not impossible, but it's harder. But when you go to a city which is literally being built real time, ground up, people are forced into collaboration. I still remember I went for a coffee with some guy in Texas, in Austin rather, in Texas. And I was having a conversation, a really successful guy. And at the end of that conversation, a guy next to him before I left was like, "Hey man, just overheard your story. Just wanted to say, like, it's a really amazing thing." We got talking. And this guy was writing a book and he was from Sao Paulo. And he was like this, multi-millionaire that had built this huge investment company. And it's like, you don't often get that, like, just literally in a coffee shop sat next to someone, and people are open. They've got that open mind because they're all there wanting to connect to build this city from the ground up. So I think if you can get on one of those trajectories of growth in a city like Austin, there's other places in the world. Manchester's actually a pretty good place for that right now in the UK. Then it puts yourself, we talk about environment, at a real strategic advantage.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, before we recorded the podcast as well, we also spoke about me going to Manchester and how it's definitely been on the agenda for some time as well for me.
Yeah,
So like
well,
your
if
first
you next
your
come up,
first
we'll come.
yeah, no, thank you, thank you. Like your first deal, like what did it look like? How much was it for? What was it selling? And like how did it kind of inspire you or change your trajectory?
Yeah, so first deal was like $10 on Upwork.
Oh, right. Okay, amazing. It's
Yeah.
some. Hmm.
Yeah. So then I built up a little profile, but then I quickly realized that you can't, if you don't know how to sell, because I started connecting with people in Facebook groups and buying courses and stuff, that you can't make much money if you don't know how to sell. So then I started doing cold email, and people say that I've got the gift of the gab, but I'll let the listeners be the judge of that. But essentially, I managed to blag my way on a cold email to an eight-figure sportswear brand in America. And I got on the founder with a call, and I just managed to blag my way through it, not really knowing what I was doing. And I managed to sell a 7K a month contract. And that blew my mind because this was like a few months after I quit my corporate job. I was like, I literally was making like 3x my salary, and I was 26 years old. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, this is pretty crazy. But there was a downside to it. I got complacent. So over the next 6 to 12 months, we got incredible results for that brand, and I stopped doing sales. And the results were almost too good, in fact, to the point where I got in a conversation with the founder one day, still remember it like yesterday. And she said to me, "Great news, Nigel. Our business has been acquired." And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, oh, where's this going? Unfortunately, the company that's acquired us have an internal marketing team. So as of today, your services are no longer needed. 90% of my revenue gone overnight. Some poor financial decisions that I've been making in the background left me $50,000 worth of debt, no way to pay the bills next month. And I literally collapsed to my knees and I had tears running down my face. But the worst part, Ryan, was that I knew it was all my fault because I stopped making sales. So yes, that big sale, that big breakthrough was an opening in my mind of what's possible, but also I got a stark lesson to never ever be complacent. And that's where it comes back to the control thing. Like you need to know how to do sales. You need to build your pipeline. You need to put yourself in the strategic advantage of having it in your control. Because if you run a service-based business, things are outside of your control. Because we were absolutely crushing it on the results for those guys. And things happen in business. So you've always got to have backup plans, like I say backup plans, like you want to go all in, but you can't, you got to mitigate against risk.
So like what was you splashing your money on? Because you said that you made some bad financial decisions, right? So what were some of the purchases?
Courses and invest mentors that turned out to be scams, cryptocurrency. Was a mixture of a lot of things. I lost a lot of money, man.
Right. So like what courses did you pick up, like what from what course creators?
So one of the good ones was Sam Ovens' Consultant Accelerator.
I've heard about
And
that.
it wasn't the course itself. That was pretty good. It was the communities that I formed in it. I met my business partner Josh in there through a mutual friend. So it was really, I understood communities. The ones that didn't work out, I'm not going to name those people just because I don't want to get famous or bringing other people down. Like
Yeah.
I just say to people, my advice is judge people by their actions, not their words, because a lot of people talking shit out here.
Yeah, I agree. And then like how important do you think it is to, have a co-founder because obviously you found your business partner in
Yeah.
one of the groups like, is it important to have a co-founder like as opposed to just doing it by yourself?
Yeah, I mean, Y Combinator, who invest in a lot of companies, they actually, I think it might be a mandatory requirement that they have two or three co-founders because the statistics say that you're just more likely in business to be successful if you have like two or three co-founders. But the context of that is important because if you go into business and have co-founders who are just like friends and stuff, and you don't all have strategic advantages, i.e., you don't complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, you're not going to be successful. So when it comes down to business, you need to be professional. And usually, if we look at the really successful companies like Steve Jobs and Apple and Steve Wozniak, you had Steve Jobs, who was a leader, he was a great storyteller, and he kept the standards of the company and really sold it to the market. Then you had Steve Wozniak, who was a great product builder, who didn't want the limelight, who was there in the background. And a great book on that is actually called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman, which basically talks about the most important relationship in business, which is between the visionary and the integrator. The visionary being the person who has a grand vision, who can sell the company, is a storyteller, who can lead the team. And the integrator being the person who implements that vision and makes all the trains run on time, who likes the operations and some of the what the visionaries at least would call unsexy, and just make sure that the whole team implement the vision. And ultimately, they do the inputs that they need to get to the outputs required. So it's not black and white, is what I'm trying to say. But if you can find someone who really does complement you and you both have the same goals, and it's important to think long term and make sure you sign contracts. That's another big one. Don't do business on a shake of a hand. If someone tells you to do that, it's a load of bullshit. But if you can find that person, yes, it can unlock a lot of doors. Because ultimately, when we get to the end of life, Ryan, what have we got? We've got the memories and the people we had them with. I don't know about you, but I'd much more rather have people that I went through the shit with, because then we can reminisce about it. And that, and don't want to get me started on this, is why I think solopreneurship is bullshit.
Right. That's amazing. And then, one of your agencies, right? 5K to 140K a month, right? How?
Yeah.
How? That's what the audience will love to know. How?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things. If I had to boil it down to a few key things, one was building a big personal brand. In the first year of LinkedIn, on 2022, I really got started. Built an audience to 7,000 followers. Didn't really get anything in return in terms of business. Year two, I went from 7 to 40,000 followers and brought in $600,000 of new revenue for our business. But it was only possible because I put the first year in and built the foundations. So that was a big unlock. The second thing was understanding how to lead, and also understanding that you can't get B and C level people to be A players sometimes. You just got to pay more money and find people who are really good at what they do. And when we hired this operations manager, because I'm the visionary, we hired an integrator for our business. I basically backed out of all the day-to-day operations of our company. And whilst we hit 1.2 million in revenue, and that's the great big, sexy revenue number, the most important part is our profit margins went from 15 to 30%. And that was only possible because we had an operations manager who was working on the operations, the finances, the team every single day, whilst I had my time back to focus on building strategic partnerships, focused on writing more content, focused on the vision of the agency and driving it forwards. And we had to pay 5 times the salary for that person. But then look at what we did with the profit margins. We got our business from 60 to 140K a month in, the 12 months following.
That's insane. So what did the team look like?
So it was a 10-person team, and we kind of had a bit of a pod structure. So it was me, I was leading the team, I was doing all the sales, I was building the partnerships. And then we had the operations guy who was basically running all the finances. And he built out an in-house content team. So he was basically charging up the big projects in the business. Then the co-founder, Josh, he was basically running all the strategy for the client fulfillment team for mainly the ads and stuff we used to run. And then underneath Josh, we had some video editors, some graphic designers, and some copywriters. And then I had some assistants on the sales side. So some sales assistants that helped me get calls booked in and make sure the pipeline was all ticking away.
I love that. And then did you niche down? Was it a specific niche that you was focused on, or was you just kind
Yeah.
of working with, okay, what was the niche? Real estate, right?
No, that was the previous agency. The last one was e-commerce. So
Okay.
it was supplements, skincare, and CBD brands, health and wellness.
Right. Okay. Amazing. And how important do you think it is to actually niche down if you have an agency?
Very important. But the reason why most people get wrong, the biggest reason why you want to niche down as an agency, most people think it's because of the marketing. It's so obviously you can talk to your ideal customer and, resonate with them. I'm not disagreeing, but that's not the most important thing. And here's why. So think about it. If I've got results, really good results for 10 supplement brands, how much easier and how much less time do you think it's going to take for me to get the same result for another supplement brand compared to a, let's say, fashion brand, right? Now, what does that time mean in business? That means we're saving money because we're more efficient, so we have more profit, so we have more cash, so we can reinvest in our business and grow faster. So it means operationally, you're more efficient at scale. Because ultimately, what most people don't realize of agencies is if we strip everything back, what is an agency? You're just scaling people. And if you want people to be efficient, you have to productize and you have to systemize. And if you're focusing on lots of different niches and industries, it's very hard to build systemized operations. And here's the thing, when you've got results with 10 supplement clients, then you can hire someone who just worked on supplement clients for the past 5 to 10 years. So now you build a team with people who have experience only in that industry, which then means your profit margins are even better, which means you have even more cash, which means you've got a massive competitive advantage. And the other thing is you can increase your prices. Because another thing most agencies don't understand, Ryan, is the only real way, apart from getting more leads in the door, to get more profit and cash for your business is you either decrease cost or you increase prices. Now, if you increase prices, there's way more upsides. When I came into Alpha Inbounds, we were charging like 2K a month. By the time I left, we were charging 10K a month minimum. So we had 14 clients. We were doing 140K a month because we massively increased the prices because the value we were offering in our specific industry was so much better than our competitors because we focused and it took such a lot less time to get the desired result they wanted to. And we also hired people in that niche with that specific experience. So that's why you need to niche down, because long term you have a better, operation, more efficient, so you get more cash, so you can reinvest and grow your company faster. And that's what none of these guys who sell courses talk about. And why is that? Because they've never built real businesses.
Right. And funny enough, you've actually pointed me into a different direction, which is LinkedIn, right? We're both on a platform quite a lot. And I've been noticing these gurus popping up left, right, and center, like overnight gurus. Like, what's your kind of take on everything that's going on in this space at the moment?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. What are you talking about? People who write about LinkedIn on LinkedIn?
Yeah, people that write about LinkedIn on LinkedIn, people that seem to be complete experts in their field and like you've never heard about them before. They don't really have too much going on in their LinkedIn, but yet they're trying to sell information and they're trying to sell
Yeah.
courses, but they haven't got any like physical, tangible proof behind what it is that they're saying. Like, like would you think about this current space?
Would you get, would you get, let's say, I don't know, health advice off a really fat guy?
No, definitely not.
No, exactly. So we wouldn't get business advice off someone who's not built a business, right? So my whole thing is judge people off their actions, not their words. Because a lot of people like talking a big game. But if you want to put the odds in your favor, can you work with someone who's not done it before that you can get the result? Maybe, but at the end of the day, you can only make a few decisions in life, and it's better to find someone who's actually done the thing and then work with them because the reality of them getting success for you again, if they've already done the exact thing that you want, is a lot higher. So judge people by their actions, not their words. For the people who write about on LinkedIn, it's interesting because social media platforms, we've seen this game play out, and I've spent $100 million in advertising. I know how the game works. A lot of people complain about reach dropping, right? Now, how social media platforms work is at the start, they basically give people a lot of organic reach. Now, why do they do that? It's so loads of people flock to the platform and then they build businesses around that organic content. But what are the social media platform? What are they doing? They're gathering data. And what do you think they're going to do with that data? They're going to monetize it. They're going to make you pay for it. And then guess what they're going to do? They're going to drop the reach because you built your business around these assets. So you're in that platform, your audience. The only way to now reach them, like we've seen with Facebook, like we've seen with Instagram, now we're seeing with LinkedIn, we're starting to see with TikTok as well, we're seeing with YouTube, you've got to pay for it. So there's so many people who complain about reach, but at the end of the day, it's your fault. You're just ignorant to not understand the end game for these social media platforms. And the other thing is You were building it for free. Like, how can you complain? The exchange of value was ridiculous that you got. And that's why these social media platforms are so goddamn valuable. They give an incredible user experience and you get all this reach for free. So you either learn how paid advertising works, or you basically go to another platform that's on the organic climb and you go and build there instead. So that's what I'd say. And the problem is for a lot of these people are building LinkedIn audiences about how to write on LinkedIn, and all their stuff's around ghostwriting. What are they going to do when all the reach drops? Their
Hmm.
business model goes down the drain.
Very, 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 very true. So, wow, like I think, like doesn't that kind of put the idea into your mind of, the importance of building a community and, as you said, like actually having emails. So if any of these platforms decide to kind of change the algorithm all of a sudden, then you've still got those emails, you've still got a community. And that's why I think, school.com, is doing
Yeah.
so well and will do so well is because like it's a website, like it's a community, and I guess you could probably take people's emails from there. I'm not really 100% sure yet entirely how the platform works, but I think that's why it's important to, own email addresses and have a community. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, if you think about what the social media platforms are doing, they control all the data. This is why Amazon, the most successful company in the world. Like you can't compete with Amazon because let's say, for example, in the UK, like a small company that's trying to compete with Amazon, they've not just got access to all the data across all of the buyers across the UK, they've got access to all the data across all the buyers across the entire globe. So that means that they can predict when people want things before they even want them in the exact time frames, which means what? They can literally put their distribution bases and their warehouses in very strategic locations so they know on stock levels how much stock they've got to put in specific warehouses. And that's why they win the game because they own all the data, and that means their supply chain's a lot better. And obviously, it got better customer experience. But if you take that down to a micro level for yourself, you can do that. You can get email addresses, you can get phone numbers, and that's why you can build your own data. When an investor comes to look to buy your company, if you have data that you own, it's a lot more valuable for that exact reason. So it's basically playing the social media giants at their own game. You take it, we can talk about emails, we can talk about community, but it's basically just data at the end of the day. If you own more data, you win.
I love that. And then, like just quickly touching upon niching down, right? When you're choosing a niche, does it have
Yeah.
to be one specific like industry or can it be two, for example?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think it really depends on how do those services interlink. For example, for us, like supplement and skincare brands, very close. To get creators that are good for supplement skincare brands, like they can do both. So, operations can be efficient at scale. So you've just got to be honest, like how closely tied are those two industries? And then you've also got to be honest about how big is the addressable market, TAM, which is an acronym for the addressable market in business. And you just got to understand that if you want to scale a big business, you're going to have a big market. So sure, you can start really niche and then scale out, but a lot of businesses don't go big because they focus on an industry that's way too small. And obviously, you can work within an industry, be niche within that industry, and expand out into that industry. But I think looking at the market size is also important. So I think it also depends on how big you want to scale, what kind of business do you want? Like, do you want to build a team or do you just want a lifestyle business? These are choices that you've got to make yourself. Because really, if you just want to, I don't know, like we'll go back to the knitting example. If you just want to teach people how to do knitting, you could probably find 10 customers or 50 customers that are willing to pay you like 3 to 5 grand a month. And that is literally their sole purpose in life. You can be doing like 50, 100K a month just on serving people who do knitting. Can you get that to 100 million a month? Probably not. But if you just want that kind of business and lifestyle, go for it. So I think it also comes down to thinking about what you actually want in life and what kind of business you want to build. And then the questions about niche will become more apparent to you.
I love that. And then when it came to your agency, did you employ, these people, or did you kind of like outsource on platforms that you were once on, like Fiverr, sorry,
Yeah.
Upwork or Fiverr?
Yeah, we started out by employing people, on those platforms, and then we transitioned over to full-time employment. So the fact of the matter is no one's going to care about your work as much as you and your people. That's just the cold hard truth. So if you're using third parties, it's a good transition. But ultimately, if they work for other clients, you're not the priority. Like they're prioritizing everyone, they're prioritizing themselves. So you just got to accept that standard. If you can't afford it right now, no worries. Just build up your cash reserves until you can. You can work with some great contractors. But when you've got the cash to do it, if you bring people in house, you can control the standards of how they work and ultimately build a team culture. And that's how I build an unbeatable business, have a massive competitive advantage. Like there's no, if you've got just a big team of contractors that all work with loads of different clients versus a full-time team, as long as if they're both like they've got the same leader, they're doing the same service, like the full-time team will win every day of the week.
Amazing. And then like, what does your ideal girlfriend look like? That's actually a question I wanted to ask you from the
I
beginning.
I didn't expect that.
Yeah, 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 because like you were speaking about, finding a partner and like just off of your, off of your whole kind of story already, like what does your kind of ideal partner look like?
Look like
Yeah, as
just
in like
looks.
character, no, as in like characteristics and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's something that I'm still trying to work out. I think I kind of dance between someone who's, really supportive, like want a family, to almost like just a fearless leader. Like I really respect, I'm quite attracted to women leaders out there. And I really believe in
Like Cody
empowering.
Sanchez, for example.
Yeah, yeah, for example, like fair play to her. She's a lot of the business model. I'm actually modeling off her what she did at Contrarian Thinking. So big shout out to Cody. She's killing the game. But I think someone like that who really challenge me and they've got strong opinions. I do want to have a family, so I'd like to partner up with someone else who wants that too, which obviously for a woman, career side makes things a bit more complicated. But I think ultimately someone who's willing to be bold, stand up to me, I stand up to them, and then they push me and I push them, and then together, we go and conquer the world.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Like that's
What about
perfect.
you?
I'm already in a relationship at the moment. So
Okay,
she's very very supportive. And for me that's what it's about. Completely different profession to me. She's actually in the healthcare industry. I think for me, like I think it's important to have a balance. I'm not too sure if I would like somebody that's just like myself, really, because I feel like there might be a clash. But I also understand that it's important to, have somebody that kind of uh gives you a kick up the butt sometimes, to actually go harder for yourself. But I think as long as you have somebody that's supportive and somebody that believes in you and somebody that loves you for you, then yeah, like that's it.
I wish you both the world of happiness, Ryan.
No,
Long may
thank
this
you.
partnership continue.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then like any words of wisdom or advice for, any of the upcoming entrepreneurs or anyone that's just on their entrepreneurial journey right now and that may be a little bit stuck?
Yeah, like I said, we live in a world which is too soft right now. So forget outside opinion, forget people that are telling you to work hard. If you're in a season of building, then do the work. Just focus on inputs, not outputs, and track it. They did a study of people losing weight, and it was quite profound of what they found. The biggest factor if you lose more weight or not is if you get on the scales every single day. But that can be applied in business and anywhere in life. You basically just got to track your metrics every single day. And the goal that you're getting to, you focus on the inputs every single day. At the end of the month, see if you've got the output you wanted. If you didn't, dial up the inputs or do different inputs. And eventually you'll figure out what that equation is. And then you'll be able to just repeat that for the rest of your life for everything that you want to achieve. And the tagline at David to Goliath is keep dreaming like a giant, but fight, believe in your dreams like a goddamn underdog, baby.
I love that. I love that. And then like what does your day to day look like?
Day to day, so I try and start off the day with 4 or 5 hours deep work after I've done a morning run and a cold shower. And just try and get into the work. And what I do is I try and focus on reverse engineering in terms of leverage. So, Naval talks about leverage a lot. Like, what are the activities that I can do in order that have the highest magnitude of leverage and give me the biggest output for the input of my time? So, it might be writing a newsletter or creating some ads. These kind of things that obviously I do inputs, but they get drastically bigger outputs. Then as the day goes on, after kind of 12 o'clock, I start taking calls, getting podcasts with great people like yourself. And then I try to do the admin tasks. And then at the end of each day, I really try and hold myself to the standards of planning the next day, the night before, because then as you sleep, your brain calculates how to solve the problem. So you wake up completely focused, and already your brain's already done half of the work. And it's amazing what can happen when you sleep. And ideally, try and sleep for 7 to 8 hours. So that's pretty much how the day looks, man. I'm still trying to refine things. I'm looking to try and move into an apartment here in Manchester so I can get control of my environment. But yeah, that's pretty much a thing. But I'm always optimizing, always trying to focus on more high leverage things, always looking to delete and delegate tasks and delete unnecessary calls in the calendar. And just stay focused, man. But obviously try and get a little bit of balance.
I love that. And like similar to the diary of a CEO, we actually ask our guests to bring on a question for the next guest. So I've actually got a question here for you from the previous guest, and it's what was your first job?
First job was working. So my dad actually used to work at Adidas Group, and he got me a job in the factory. So my dad's like pretty old school. And he was like, I want you to figure out how to work hard. Now, this factory basically just like packing the goods to go off to the Adidas warehouses. And the guys in there were like, they'd gone to prison and stuff. So I was like the son's boss. Like everyone was, looking down on me kind of thing. And I have to really mix in there with real men. And it really, really taught me, one, that I don't want to be in that situation. And they even said that to me. They were like, don't do what we did. Work your ass off and make something out of life. And it also taught me what hard work was. So I'll give you one example because I still remember the first day. And I got in and I went into the back of this 40-foot lorry and I was unloading like loads of bags. And I got through it as fast as I could. I was like sweating profusely. And I went up to the manager. I was like a massive beaming grin on my face. And I was like, I've unloaded it, man. Like thinking in the back of my mind, I get to go home early from work. And he was like, fantastic. He was like, we've got 5 more 40-foot trucks to unload today. He was like, I'm going to load up the next one. And by the way, it's golf stuff. So this is the heaviest equipment you're going to be handling. And I was like, fuck, welcome to the real world, Nigel. And that was when I was 16 years old. And I did those 8-hour shifts. Sometimes they were night shifts. And I did that all summer for like 3 summers in a row. And that gave me some money to go traveling and stuff. But the best experience was, like I said, it taught me like work ethic, but also hanging around with those, what I would call at the time, real men, really taught me to grow up in life.
I love that. And your top 3 entrepreneurs before we wrap things up?
Good question. I think Hormozy is a really good one. Like just because he says to you that you can't be obsessed and just be yourself. And he just questions everything and breaks things down to things that even a child could understand. I genuinely think that Hormozy is going to be one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our generation. So I definitely think Hormozy. Naval, like Naval Ravikant, he's a really, really original thinker. And there's not many original thinkers out there. And even if you look at someone like Hormozy, actually a lot of his stuff comes from Naval. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there and they do shout him out, but he's like an original source. Like he genuinely thinks, again, maybe it comes from other people, but mostly it's original thoughts that come from himself. So I'd definitely say Naval Ravikant. Last one. Okay, so there's a guy that really, really helped me on my journey. And he is like fairly popular over in the US. He's called Drew Green and he's the CEO of Indochino. So a little backstory on this guy, because what he did was ridiculous. He got a lot of experience at growing companies and he was like in his, I think, early 40s at the time. And he had an opportunity to become the CEO of one of Amazon's highest divisions. And he told me on a podcast, they gave him a blank check and said, you can write whatever you want on this check. Like, you can have anything. That's how badly they wanted this guy. And he said no. And instead, he went to Indochino, a failing company, and within 6 years, he turned that company around. It's a men's suitwear brand. And now they're doing 150 million plus in revenue. They're the second fastest growing company in Canada, and they're about to break into the US market and go into women's. And this guy, like the conviction that this guy had, I still remember when we were doing the podcast. And I was like, Drew, you've grown this massive company. I was like, is that it? Is there more to come? And he just looked at me dead in the eye. When I talk about conviction, you know, my favorite quote ever from Winston Churchill, one man with conviction will overwhelm 100 who have only opinions. This guy just gripped his fists together and he was like, Nigel, trust me, I'm just getting started. And I was like, fuck, I don't want to be competing with this guy. But that guy is just like, he's an incredible family guy. He's an incredible leader. And he just inspired me greatly, man. And he actually taught me that apart from your people in business, which are the most important people, the second people are your partners. And he gave me this example. I will shut up about him in a second, but where he's developing this strategic relationship with a guy in China for like 10 years and he didn't ask anything from him. And then when he was getting that company off the ground, one phone call, like they raised like $60 million. And he just taught me the importance of building long-term relationships, and partnerships are so important. And that was a real big unlock for me. Because again, a lot of these course gurus, they don't talk about partnerships. Partnerships are one of the things as well that I didn't mention before, which got my agency to 140K a month. So shout out to Drew Green. I'm so thankful that I got to meet this guy, and I hope I get to speak to him again at some point, but he's an incredible entrepreneur and greatly inspired me.
I love that. And then, you know, actually going back to the beginning again once more, like what made that first company that paid you 7K a month trust you? You know, like why did they trust you? Like why did they decide to work with you?
Conviction.
Conviction. I love that.
Yeah.
And then what did the actual process look like? So, you know, you've obviously come across them, you know, so could you speak about how you came across them, you know, the phone call, like, you know, like did you then get
I
them
just
on
called it. I just called, emailed a load of people. They responded. I got on a call and I just sold them. I literally, like now, I understand preparation is extremely important, but at the time I didn't have it. I was constrained. I had to make this money. And I
did you
just
have a
went on
contract?
there. Yeah, we had a contract. It was a basic one, just like, copy and pasting, like edit a few things out, like really scrappy, man. But the thing is, I did an analysis of their business and I got, someone else involved, a contractor that I knew to run the ads who ran big ad campaigns. And we were confident we could do it. And they weren't doing a good job. So I just had the conviction and boldness. And I think that's what a lot of people need in life. Like you need to, if you don't ask in life, you don't get. So it was just having that pure, bold conviction of me quitting my job, knowing I need to make it and just stand up for what I believe in and just ask confidently, knowing that I can deliver and just make a big promise.
I love that. And then where can people find you and what question would you like to pass on to the next guest?
Yeah, for sure. So davidtogoliath.com, the newsletter, so go and subscribe, and LinkedIn, Nigel Thomas, David to Goliath, connect with me, tell me your story. I'd love to hear from you. And then in terms of my question for the next guest would be, when you're lonely at night, when no one else is there, when you look in the mirror, when you brush your teeth, what are the real questions? What are the real questions that you ask yourself? The ones that you push deep down, the uncomfortable conversations. What are those? And what are the answers?
I love that. I love that. And guys, thank you for staying until the end of the podcast. Please be sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, drop a comment below, and share this to anyone else that you find will benefit from this video. But that was that, guys, and I will see you in the next episode.